So here's the card that y'all filled out. Sometime between now and August 7th, when we first moved in, I wanted to hear from you what you wanted Soul Center to be. And this person didn't sign it, so here we go. What do you want Soul Center to be in your life and for others? Inspiration and language to be reborn into the Christ within for all. Okay. True. How do you want it to feel? True, real, authentic, and loving. Yeah. How will you bless this space? Bringing peace and love and assistance. Yeah. So thank you for that. That sounds good, right? That sounds good. Let's take a deep breath in and let's pray. And what prayer means to me here at Spiritual Soul Center, and I hope it means to you as well, is to simply align with God, align with the divine, to be calm enough, to be still enough, and to be open enough to feel the presence of the divine right here. To know that in the turmoil of life, all the things to get done and the places to be, that I have this resource, this essence of my being that is spiritual, that is the home of the divine itself. And then when I just pause a moment, I can know it as peace and possibility. I can know it as serenity. I can know it as tenderness, encouragement, strength. I can know that that essence of me is all of that and more. And that I am never alone. That the I that I think of as this body is enlivened by the Spirit that is God. And knowing this for myself, knowing this deeply in my own self, allows me to know that it is the truth for every living being. That sometimes in their pain or in their frustration or in their rage, it doesn't look that way. But I know this. When Jesus said, "When I rise up, I bring all men toward me," we are all capable of that. When we rise up in consciousness and know the truth of our own being, then we allow others around us to believe that about themselves as well. That's the power of the presence of the divine. For this glimpse in this moment, for this chance to just consider that truth, I am grateful, and so are we, and so it is. Amen.
Yes, we can all be together.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can all be as one. Yes, we can all be together. Yes, we can all play as one. Play as one.
Where else could you go on a Sunday morning and hear that, huh? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I want to start off with a quote from this book called 7,000 Ways to Listen by Mark Nepo. Let's see if I can find the page. This hit me. You might imagine, I get stuck on pages. You've heard that before. Been stuck on this page for a while. And this is a quote in the first paragraph. "The comfort of what is familiar is often stronger than our sense of what is good for us." Right? The comfort of what is familiar is often stronger than our sense of what is good for us. That happens, right? That happens because the familiar is so comfortable. The familiar, like, why do you want to get uncomfortable? Right? It's like, well, this feels good. It's like when you're in the flow of stuff, like, why do I want to get out of the flow of this? This feels nice. This feels nice. What would cause me to do that? You know, there's this seductive nature, I think, to the familiar. Right? There's this seductive nature to it. And we know what we know about it. We don't expect any obstacles to come up. We know the lay of the land. It feels good. We don't have to think too much about it. I mean, I was just talking about this the other day. I had breakfast, Renee and I did with some of her friends, and we were talking about the new Harris Teeter down on Independence and Caroline Beach Road. It's huge. And one of the gals was like, yeah, I've been in there, you know, it's big, but I'm learning to find my way. And this other gal and I were like, oh no, not going there. Too big. I don't know my way around. I don't know if I'll be able to find anything I need. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to the new Harris Theater. When we go, Renee goes. I don't go. I don't go. Because it's familiar, you know, the old Food Lion there is familiar, but now they're changing that up. So I have to talk to the produce guy all the time. I'm like, where is the organic this, you know? And he's like, oh, it's right here, Paula. All right. But that familiar thing, you know, we love it. We love it. But sometimes we hold on to the familiar and it's not good for us. It takes away our authenticity. It takes away our freedom. It takes away who we want to be. It's unhealthy. It's unhealthy spiritually. It's unhealthy physically sometimes. Unhealthy emotionally, psychologically. It's unhealthy for us to be there. Because we know, we have this sense and we know it's not a good idea to stay in the familiar. But we're like, well, but it's what I know. It's what I know. It's like the devil you know or the devil you don't know. We want to stick with the devil we know. It's like, but it's not good for us. It's not good for us. That's what Mark is talking about in this section in the book. You know, and I think the reason that we don't want to go into the familiar, or I don't want to go into the familiar, is because it's something I fear. I fear being out of control. I fear maybe failing, not knowing what to do. Maybe I won't even be able to handle it if I get out of the familiar, right? Like, it's better just to stay right here. It's better to stay right here, but it's not always the best for us. And I agree with that. I agree with that. He says, it's not the best for us, and I thought about it this way. I thought about, like, when we build that nice little area, our little yard, and we have the fence around it, and the lawn is nice and manicured, and there's some flowers, but there's some weeds over here too. But we're just going to stay there because it feels comfortable, because it's just too hard to decide to be uncomfortable. Like I said, who in the world would decide that? Let me go back to Nepo. So he says this. He says, each of us has an impulse of the soul that tells us the thing that we really, you know, is telling us do this, that's going to lead us into discomfort, that'll lead us out of bondage. And each of us has a strong change-resistant voice that no matter the pain or abuse it will utter, it's not so bad. It's home. It's how I know my way. Right? We have that, and that's an ancient archetype. This idea that I should stay where I am because it's what I know. So it's not to blame anybody. Like, don't blame me because I don't want to go to Harris Teeter. You know, it's not a blame. It's a recognition that that's the way I am. That that's the way we can be, rather than to follow the impulse of the soul. And he gives Moses as an example in this section. And he talks about Moses heeding the call to lead his people out of Egypt, right? And then what do the people do? The people were in slavery by the hundreds of thousands in Egypt. And Moses goes to rescue them, and he leads them out, and that's another story, and I'll tell you about it in a minute here. But, and then this is how they reward him. They're like, the whole company of Israel complained against Moses and his brother Aaron in the wilderness, and they said, why didn't God let us die in the comfort of Egypt, where we had lamb stew and all the bread we could eat? You brought us out into this wilderness to starve us to death, and the whole company of Israel, wham, wham, wham. You know, you let us out of this slavery, and now we're complaining about it. Yes. All right? Yes. It's like, do you know what's good for us? Do we know what's good for us? Like this, let me just say this about any Bible story. I had the greatest Bible teacher at Unity Village once tell me, this may have happened or may not have happened, but the story is true. You see, there's something here for me today. This isn't just something that happened back. Who was taking notes when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt? Nobody was taking notes. Nobody was interviewing God to see what he had to say about it, right? I believe this writer was writing to us to teach us something that we could use today. That's what it's about. So please don't get hung up on, oh, it's Moses, and I don't know what happened for sure. But there's some truth in this story, and I love the truth in this story. Because in the end, Moses was following the impulse of his soul. In the beginning, he was not, by the way, because God comes to him. Like I said, nobody was taking notes. God comes to me the same way he came to Moses. God comes to you the same way, and that's from within. And he says, listen, I got a job for you. You're going to go do this. And what's the first thing we want to say when we're ushered into the discomfort of something that's unfamiliar? No, not me. No, I don't think that's me. Moses said to God in the story, I stutter. You want me to go tell Pharaoh to let the people out of Egypt? Like, I stutter. Well, I'm the wrong choice. Wrong choice. And what's God say? God says, well, I'll send your brother Aaron with you because he's really good with words. So no problem. Got it covered. You know how that happens in you. Something happens and somebody says, hey, you're really good at this. You should know, like, oh my God, really? That is the calling? And then Moses, what was the other thing I was going to say? I totally forgot because I was so caught up in that. So then God says, listen, I'll be right there with you. And Moses said, well, how does Pharaoh know that I'm going to be talking with you behind me? Like, how's he going to know it's really you? I mean, look at me. I'm just a shepherd. What in the world? How is the Pharaoh going to know that I'm the one? And he said, well, I'll prove it to you right now. He said, throw that staff down on the ground and see what happens. So he throws his staff on the ground, turns into a snake. And then God says, well, pick it back up by the tail. He picks it up back by the tail, and now it's a staff again. God says, listen, I'm here. I'm here with you. Don't worry. Don't worry. So even though the people doubted Moses after he was there, he was doubting himself before he went on the journey. Right? He was not wanting to believe that. You hear that? Am I making the point? I hope I am.
Yes.
Yeah. But Moses eventually said yes, and he goes on. Mark Nepo says, like I said, following the impulse of the soul. And he compares that to the voice of Hamlet like this. He said, we could call the impulse of the soul our Moses voice, and the change-resistant voice of the familiar our Hamlet voice. Because Hamlet repeatedly is on the verge of doing what he knows he needs to do, and then he talks himself out of every action, dispersing his resolve again and again with too much deliberation, too much thinking, convincing yourself, no, that's not, no, right? So we have this impulse of the soul that is the Moses voice, and we have this change-resistant voice that is represented by Hamlet, and both of that's going on inside of us all the time. All the time. So how do we step into the discomfort if that's the narrative, if that's what's going on? Well, one of the things I noticed about this Hamlet voice is it is the alligator jaw thing. It's yes, but. Have you ever done that yourself? Yes, but. When you say yes, but, everything before the but is gone. Like it's crossed out. No longer here. Yes, but, and then you're down this way. And that's the Hamlet voice. You ever done that? Yes, but? Mm-hmm. We learned about yes and from here, but this is yes, but. That like stops everything in its tracks. There's no possibility after yes, but. You have made your decision. You're not going anywhere else. That's it. Yes, but. That's the Hamlet voice. No, no. I don't think that's how our soul is asking us to live. The alligator jaws. That's what I wrote in my notes. Alligator jaws. Call it now. Chomp down on it. And why? Because in the unfamiliar, we make mistakes. We fail. We take one step forward and 2 steps back. It's uncomfortable and unfamiliar, so we don't want to do it. But you know what? We learn more in the unfamiliar than we will ever learn in the familiar. You know that from your experience. We learn more in the unfamiliar and the willingness to take a risk than we ever do with staying on the flat road. We learn things about ourselves that we never knew about ourselves up until then. We learn our strength, our vulnerability, our ability to care, empathy. We learn that we can be wrong and still love ourselves. We learn a whole host of things about ourselves there. We learn our resilience, our creativity, our perseverance. You don't learn that in the familiar. You're just bopping along. And the familiar is not a bad thing, only if it affects your authenticity and your freedom to be who you are. It's okay to be in the familiar, but not at the risk of giving up your authenticity and freedom. That's what I think. And these are the things we learn that we couldn't have learned in the familiar. That's what I think. We also learn what the world is about. You know what we learn about the world? We learn how it can be harsh and loving at the same time. When we are in that unfamiliar place, the world is tough and it's loving. We always run across that one thing that lifts us up, even in the midst of the unfamiliar. I got this vision of, it's like surfing. Learning about what the world is about in the unfamiliar is like surfing. Like we're on top of the wave, we get jostled about. It's not the smoothest all the time. But man, we learn something about the world when we're there. And we don't have to be sucked into the wave for it. We can surf. We can surf. We learn that about the world. And you know, the other thing we learn about God as well. We learn to trust God in the unfamiliar, because when you're out on that limb, what else is there? I mean, Moses was out on the limb when he was trying to lead these people, and these large groups of people, hundreds of thousands, well, according to the story, but that's what makes the story so profound. It might have happened, it might not have happened, but this story is true. This is true. And let me share some things about the Moses story that maybe you haven't read for a while, or maybe you haven't read at all. Somewhere in here, I started. They were out in the wilderness. Oh, here we go. Back here. So, when Moses is first deciding to go, God reinforces over and over to him, listen, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with you. I mean, do you feel that when you are in the unfamiliar? Do you take the time to realize that there's something greater in me happening here? You know, everybody who goes into recovery knows that, because they're taught to give my will over to the will of something greater than me. Do we do that all the time? That's not just for people in recovery, or as Pastor Meg says, we're all recovering from something, to give that will over. It says, I'll be with you, trying to convince Moses. But Moses said, they're not going to trust me. They're not going to hear a word I say. And God keeps saying, yes, they will. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. So what happens is Moses goes, and of course Pharaoh's like, who are you? What are you doing here? Why do you expect me to release all these slaves that are taking care of all of our business just because you say they want to go worship your God? Like, are you nuts? So what happens is God says, all right, we'll show that guy. We'll tell him what's going on. And the first thing he does is allow Moses to turn the Nile River into blood. All right, that's the first thing he does. So Pharaoh sees it, and his magicians, though, can do the same thing. So that wasn't such a big deal. He says, ha, ha, ha. No, not letting them go. So Moses said, well, what am I going to do, God? What's the deal? So strike 2, God says, well, go to Pharaoh and tell him, listen, if he doesn't let the people go, I'm going to send frogs to the whole land, and the frogs are going to cover everything, and I'm not going to let the frogs get out of there until he lets your people go. So Moses goes, talks to Pharaoh. God sends all these frogs. Pharaoh says, I give up. Moses prays to God. God takes the frogs away. Pharaoh says, ha ha, not doing it. Does this sound familiar in your psyche? This is not about frogs. This is me bargaining. Well, if I just had this, then I get, no, I'm still not ready. No, not for me. Frogs, that was the second strike. Strike 3 was gnats. Now we're going to send gnats everywhere. Gnats everywhere. It's going to eat up the earth. And so that's what they did. They were all over the people, all over the animals, gnats everywhere. Pharaoh says, get rid of these gnats. Okay, I'll let your people go. Moses prays to God, says, hey, get rid of these gnats. The gnats go away. Pharaoh says, oh, no, sorry. Psych. Not going to happen. The gnats didn't do it. Strike 4, the flies. Same thing. The flies come in. And it seems that Pharaoh, and it even says in this Bible, that God makes Pharaoh more stubborn and more stubborn and more stubborn. Like, why would God do that? And I don't believe in this vengeful kind of God that's sending these crazy things to hurt people. But this story is trying, I think, to make us believe in the power of the divine in us. Like, this is how powerful it is. Now, if there's a bunch of descendant gnats or flies or frogs around Wilmington, I'll know kind of who to check in with. But, yeah. So, of course, the gnats didn't work. Strike 5 was the animals. He put disease in all these animals. And Pharaoh was like, okay, I'll be with you this time. I'll let your people go. No, it didn't happen on strike 5. You know how many strikes there are? I got a few more to go. Strike 6 is boils. He put boils and disease on all these people. It was really gross, right? Moses prays again. God releases the people from the disease. Pharaoh said, psych, not going to do it. Strike 7, hail. Puts hail. Hail comes from the skies, destroys all the crops, makes a mess of everything. Pharaoh says, yes, please, get this hail out of there. What in the world are you doing? Moses prays to God. The hail goes away. And Pharaoh says, nope, not ready yet. Strike 7. Strike 8 is the locust. Same story. Strike 8 is the locust. Strike 9 is darkness. Darkness all the time. Doesn't happen. Strike 10. God says to Moses, I'm going to hit Pharaoh one last time. And I'm going to take every firstborn child. Every firstborn child of the aristocracy, every firstborn child of every slave, every firstborn child, every firstborn animal. Death. That's what he's going to take. And finally, the Pharaoh releases the Israelites from Egypt. What does this tell me? That's how much God has my back. That's how much the divine, that's sticking with me the whole way, even in the face of this stubborn resistance that's coming from the outside. Always. Always there. Dependable to the end. No matter. I don't know if all that happened, but man, it is a powerful story to tell me that the divine that I know is me is that powerful in me and through me. That will never leave me by the side of the road. That will always be there, regardless of anything that's happening in the outer, and regardless of the stubbornness of that obstacle that I see in front of me. Like, that is a powerful thing. That is a powerful thing. That's what gives me the courage to step out of the familiar into the unfamiliar. To know that. To know that. Sometimes I got to ask for help. Sometimes there's other things involved with it, but to know that that is there, that's just like, boom, it's always there. It's always there. The power of that. 10 strikes, and maybe more. So when you hear that call, when you feel what that is coming from inside of you, there's a natural tendency to doubt it. I could tell you, there was never in a million years did I think I would be preaching like this to a group of people. Like, it wasn't on my radar. But it got to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so here I am. I think the same thing can be said of forgiveness, for instance. You know, there might be that thing coming up in me all the time. Well, Paul, you know, it's time for you to let this go. Nope, stubborn. Nope, not going to do it. Opportunity after opportunity to forgive come up with me. Do I take them? I always have what I need in me to say, yes, I forgive. Yes, I let that go. Or yes to the calling to do or to be whatever it is that the divine is calling you to be. That's who called Moses. That's who calls us. That's what calls us. The divine essence of us. It's tough stepping out into the unfamiliar. But if you know the divine has your back in 10 ways times 10, I'll take that bet. I'll take that one. So let's take a deep breath as we spend a few moments in meditation this afternoon. And to realize, to contemplate the possibility that this divine energy, this God, whatever the name is that you call, this power beyond comprehension, really, because that's what this writer was really trying to tell us about, is it's beyond comprehension, that this is the power that exists in me. It exists in me. It's amazing. It's incredible. No one can take it from me, and it's in everyone else as well. It comes from love. The origin is love. I don't believe in a vengeful God. I believe in a God that is love. And the power is in that. The power to be strengthened and enlivened and confident in that divine presence. So let's just sit for a little while together. Let's know it. For these moments, let's know it as the truth. Our heart wide open. have learned so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Jew. The truth has shared so much of itself with me that I can no longer call myself a man, a woman, an angel, or even pure soul. Love has befriended Hafiz so completely that it has turned to ash and freed me of every concept and image my mind has ever known. Amen.
All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. One more time. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. Hands out. Ishkala me bulela, Ishkala me bulela. Hands on heart. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. Hands out. Ishkala me bulela, Ishkala me bulela. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. Ishkala me bulela, Ishkala me bulela.
So let's close the way we do. If you can, please stand. If you would prefer to sit, you may sit. But let's say our closing prayer this way. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be happy. Until next time, amen.